You're listening to the Junto Podcast, a podcast about leadership, faith, community, and pretty much anything else that you want to talk about. Visit us at www.juntopodcast.com. That's JUNTO podcast.com. Thanks for stopping by and enjoy the show. Episode 80 of the Junto Podcast, and excited to be with you all month of May. We have been talking about mental health. May is Mental Health Month, and trying to hit some highlights, maybe talk about just some common things that people are going through. And obviously, we always say that we're not doctors. If you got some serious stuff going on, certainly you need to seek treatment. But a lot of times, some of the mental health issues that we deal with are brought on just by everyday living. And those are the types of issues that we are going to talk about. So welcome back to the Junto Podcast, or welcome to, that's right, the Together Podcast. And Heather, what's going on? How are you? It's been a little bit, it seems like.
It has. We've been busy. We've been doing a lot with Memorial. It's May, so we had Memorial Day, so we had church picnics and shootout, our very first tactical tailor shootout, which was amazing in Missouri. So we did some traveling. So we've been busy. So it's good getting back in the seat.
Getting back in the seat.
And in the saddle.
That's right. Most importantly, we just hopefully want to conclude this series.
Mental health
series.
And
hopefully give some tips, maybe some encouragement. Always, if you've never tuned into the Junto Podcast, everything we do is from that perspective of faith. So in one way or the other, we're always going to bring it back to that perspective. And with that, let's dive right in. I know the last time we were here, we talked about some of the different, not categories, but there were like some...
There were. We had some three main categories that had subsets and the specific disorders that folks deal with. First, we talked about anxiety disorders, we talked about GAD, which is generalized anxiety. Right. And a little bit, we talked about some deeper issues with anxiety and anxiety attacks, panic attacks, scary stuff.
Yeah, real scary stuff.
Mood disorders. Yeah, mood disorders we talked about, depression. And, of course, the last one was psychotic disorders, which were a little bit above level of the other two.
Right.
With some psychosis and things. And so today, like you said, we're going to talk about some tips and maybe just some ways of thinking and dealing with, especially in those moments when things hit hard.
Well, and, if nothing else, this is a platform or maybe something you can listen to that can create a conversation. We always say that we want to talk about real life things that people are going through. And my gosh, we all know that we're anxiety, depression, mental health. It's just a thing now. It was taboo in the past, and it wasn't one of the things that you could easily talk about. But we know now that people are more comfortable. There isn't the stigma behind it that there used to be when you say, listen, I'm really struggling with a mental health issue right now. Used to, it would be this big, oh my gosh, are they crazy? But now you understand that to struggle with a mental health issue is not to be crazy. There are many, many ways that we can struggle with mental health. And so if nothing else, we want this conversation to be a platform to get people talking about it, maybe to get comfortable. And hey, who knows, maybe you'll, through this process, see, you know what, maybe I do need to work on some things in my own life. So as we all do.
Right. Yeah, and you said it right there with just talking about it. I think that's what the thing was in the past, is that we didn't talk about it, so we were embarrassed, or we were embarrassed, so we didn't talk about it. And so then no one talked about it. So that the person themselves, each of us were like, oh, well, I'm weird. I'm different.
Yeah.
Why am I like this? No one else is like this, when in fact, everyone deals with some form of mental issue in their life. Because health, you talk about, let's talk about physical health.
That's it.
Everyone deals with physical health issues at some point. It's the same thing.
That's exactly right.
Same thing. So
very true.
Yes.
Very true.
All right. So getting into it.
Let's jump in. Let's do it.
Okay. So anxiety disorders. This is what we're talking about now. Anxiety stuff. All right. Anxiety
I like
stuff.
That's right.
So these are just some general help tips things. And I'm actually looking at a Healthline resource right now. You can
Awesome.
look that up online. It's called Healthline.
And we'll post the
Online.
link
Yes,
of
we'll
the
post
article in
For sure.
Yeah, we'll post it.
And I know the book you're holding right there has so much
Oh
good
my gosh,
information, but I'm
yes.
going to talk about these and then I'll turn it over to you. So, number one, question your thought pattern. In those moments, when you can actually think clearly and anxiety is not crippling you, think about your thought patterns, okay? Unhelpful thoughts can take root in your mind and distort the severity of the situation, making it seem so much worse than it
Absolutely.
is. Okay? Challenge your fears. Ask, is this true? Is this a true fear?
Wow.
Or is this something that my mind is just messing with me?
That's huge.
Okay. Number two, practice focused deep breathing.
Wow.
And a lot of these will help with each disorder,
Well,
each
yeah,
type of disorder. These are
absolutely.
just common. This is a very physical one that in those moments that you can do. Practice focused deep breathing. Measured breathing practices may help you manage immediate feelings of anxiety.
Wow.
So immediately
Immediate.
in that moment.
Yeah.
Okay. Try breathing in 4 counts and breathing out 4 counts for 5 minutes total. So you
Wow.
do that for 5 minutes. 4 in, 4 out. And that just helps your body regulate the systems, which helps the mind to think more clearly. Okay.
Absolutely.
That's one thing.
Those are good. Yeah. And it's
Right.
crazy because the stuff I have really piggybacks well off of the stuff you're talking about. So
Good.
really good.
Let me see a couple more, and
Okay.
then I'm going to turn it over to you. Another one, aromatherapy. I don't know a whole lot about that, but I know people use those essential oils, and they have those diffusers. And cool. I want to get one and get into that. But essential oils, incense, candles, lavender is always good for relaxing.
Gold, frankincense, and myrrh.
Yeah. So in those moments, okay? Exercise. We talk about mind, body,
Boy, mind,
spirit
body,
here
spirit. It's
all
a real
the time. And I will tell you, when I am exercising, this is not only is it more sharp, but I feel like it's more clear and I feel better about myself, which is the
Yeah.
biggest thing.
It's huge.
Even if I'm not doing much of anything, just moving myself. Go for a walk. Walk outside to the porch and get fresh air. Something,
That's right.
especially in those moments. But regular exercise will help to regulate.
It really
Regular
does.
is regulate.
It really does.
And our bodies are about maintenance. So,
That's it.
and last one, grounding techniques. Okay, let me explain these. Grounding techniques such as journaling can help to calm immediate feelings of anxiety. Writing down what's making you anxious gets it out of your head, and it can make it less daunting.
Wow.
Reading your thoughts and feelings can help you take stock of your emotions in the immediate moment. And this can also help you better understand the situations and events that cause your anxiety.
Wow. Huge.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Well, great stuff. And to piggyback off some of the stuff you're saying, the resource I use, but Heather and I have both done like Christian mental health coaching stuff, and I've got some certifications, Bible counseling things. And really this piggybacks off of the more spiritual side of things. Those are great practical tips. But
Right.
if you are a believer, these are some things that you can incorporate in addition to those. And the
Yes.
crazy thing about it is that being a believer, you don't do away with the other stuff. People think that just because you're a believer, you don't deal with the practical side of science or medicine. That's not it at all. But these are things that can help you from a spiritual perspective. So here are some questions that you could think to yourself, or as you're going through this process, you can audit what makes you anxious, or scared for that matter. So think about this. So number one, when do you find yourself feeling afraid or anxious? What is it that triggers that? Are you in a certain location? Are you in a crowd of people? Maybe you don't like being in big crowds. Maybe it's around certain individuals. There are just some people that can elevate and raise our blood pressure. They trigger us. That's exactly right. How long and to what extent has this fear or anxiety been occurring for you? So audit that. How long has this been taking place? How long have I been dealing with this as a person? What situation, object, person causes you the most distress, just like I was saying a minute ago? And do you find there are times when you are more anxious than others? If so, think about that. When is that? When are those moments that you really are like peaking
Right.
your anxiety is at like a threat level, like code red, you know what I mean? Like it's
yeah.
up there. And okay, so here are some positive things to focus on. When do the feelings of anxiety go away? What are some things that help you get through that? Is it after you've done the breathing techniques or maybe read some scripture or maybe said a prayer? And we ask those questions that way. In those moments, you can begin to incorporate those things that are relieving your distress. Do you have any health problems, medications, habits, anything that actually contribute to your anxiety? Those are things that you might audit
Lifestyle
in your life
choices,
as well.
things,
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yep.
So practical things with that, but I did want to just remember or remind you to always focus on the positive things. A couple of quick affirmations here. Number one, growth takes time. So if you're in a season where it's like, oh my gosh, I'm struggling, I'm anxious, when am I going to get out of this? I can tell you, speaking from a personal experience of my own, I went through it, and by the grace of God, He got me through the other side of it. And it does happen. So growth takes time. Number two, God will work in your life to overcome the anxiety that is keeping you from living life to the fullest. I want you to say that again. God will work in your life. I want you to, this time when I read this, I want you to say my life. God will work in my life to overcome the anxiety that is keeping me from living life to the fullest. I want you to say that, and I want you to believe it. And then always try to keep an eternal or spiritual perspective about things that we're doing. Guys, we say it all the time. For believers, like, we know we're just passing through, right? This isn't our final destination.
Temporary place here.
We're just passing through. So keep that in mind as you are dealing with fear and anxiety. And real quick, Psalm 37, 3 through 5, and then 7. Trust in the Lord, delight yourself in the Lord, commit your way to the Lord, rest in the Lord, and wait patiently for Him. Do not fret because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who brings wickedness schemes to pass. God has already overcome. And what a promise and comfort that is. So,
that's our hope right there. That's it. Because everything else is going to...
Oh, yeah, it already is.
Yeah, I love what you said about the taking time, small steps. Sometimes it's a one foot in front of the other. Sometimes it's a one breath after the other type of thing. And we can't base our experience off of someone else's.
That's it.
So knowing that we're all unique and our situation's unique, and that we're going to have to take it step by step. So
that's it. I mean, for sure.
So we also, that's anxiety. Those are some things that we can do to cope and help with anxiety, short term, immediate, and long term.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
So the next one was the mood disorders, which was like the depression.
Yes.
Even clinical depression. Like we all sometimes have like, oh, I'm depressed. I feel blue. I'm sad, that it moves on. But there's the clinical depression where it stays and it lingers. And there's, sometimes the medications. We've talked about that in the past as well. Folks, if you need medication, get you a doctor that you trust and you get on a plan and work all that out.
Yeah. And there's nothing to be ashamed of in that.
Not at all.
It could just be a seasonal thing. It might feel like, oh, wow, this is my new normal. This is my life now. And guys, it doesn't have to be that way. In many, many cases, I would say, honestly, in most cases, there is hope. Like there is peace. There is getting back to living life. You just have to go through that process, though.
I didn't want to skip over something before I moved into this with depression, but with anxiety attacks. Did you have anything that you wanted to?
I mean, absolutely. Well, I kind of said that I went through that experience, and I know firsthand, that it can be a very troubling time. You feel like you're dying. You feel like you're having a heart attack all the time, and it was a crazy period. But just to reiterate that, man, that there is hope on the other side. And some people will go through that for longer periods than others. Luckily for me, it was about a 3-month stint where I was really dealing with. It wasn't only the anxiety; it was the panic attacks that really threw it to the next level. It's one thing to to have anxiety.
And to worry. Yeah.
Reading those questions, too, there were probably things that I even could have been doing that were contributing to the heightened anxiety and panic
attacks.
attacks.
It's like our first bout of
that's right.
Something beyond just being sad or being depressed or being.
And you don't know what you don't know. That's why these
Right.
conversations and this information is so important, because you just don't know what you don't know.
Exactly.
And you can't
don't
be
know what you
faulted
don't-
for the things that you don't know.
That's
So,
great. Good. All right. So with depression affects millions of people. Okay. So one step, if you realize that you're having depressive episodes or in a depressive season, is to meet yourself where you are.
Oh, wow, that's good.
You may not realize that others face similar challenges, emotions, and obstacles, like we talked about. Being open, accepting, and loving toward yourself and what you're going through may help you navigate through depression.
Wow, yeah.
So I think that's a big first step
Yeah.
for lots of these is being kind to yourself. Lots of times we can be
Absolutely.
kind to others and we can show others grace and all that. But then when it comes to ourselves, we're like, I just can't get it together. We don't show ourselves grace. Not
Well,
enough, I think.
Absolutely.
So
And it's hard, in that moment, because all you feel is down. All you feel is the
Yes,
cloud. So it's
right.
hard to think positive about anything else, much less yourself. You can't even think positive about the world, and it's just, it's very, I don't know, it's just almost heartbreaking to some degree, not being able to feel joy or that peace. But the good news is, as we have progressed, I guess, as a society, if you want to call it progress, at least now we're in a stage where we're talking about it. People are recognizing it, and there are ways, there are treatments that you can get to help, I guess, snap you out of that period. And one thing I want to say, too, about depression, I used to think, well, can't you just make yourself feel better? And until it happened to me, I really was clueless about depression. And so many others are. If
Right.
they've never really been through a bout of depression, like I said, mine only lasted 3 months, and only one time in my life, by the grace of God.
Right.
It's like never happened again. But it was a real thing. And so I understand that it's not just one of those things where you can pick yourself up
Snap
by
your
your
fingers,
bootstraps
yeah.
and make yourself feel better.
Right.
It just doesn't work that way.
No,
But knowledge
that's
is
good.
power.
That's it. Number 2, consider a walk around the block. We talked about
That's
physical
good.
exercise, even just walking, moving, walk around your house if you don't feel like you can take that step of going outside. Okay. Number 3, know that today isn't indicative of tomorrow.
There you go. Doesn't have to be.
No, internal emotions and thoughts can change from day to day. Tracking experiences through journaling, like we
There
talked
you
about
go.
earlier. I told you a lot of these things coincide. Keeping a mood diary can help you to remember this. Helps you to
Yeah.
look back and say, hey, look at this.
Yeah.
I'm better today than I was yesterday. Sometimes seeing those, it's like when you do those progressive pictures, like if you get braces or something.
Yeah, you can
And you,
see the
you
progress.
take a picture when you start,
Right.
and then along the way, you're like, I can't tell any
Oh,
different.
wow.
Nothing's happening. But then you look back and you're like, oh, wow, no.
I do see progress.
So that's how this can help in that
That's it.
instance, okay? Remember to always give yourself grace, to accept that some days will be difficult, others less difficult. Try to look forward to tomorrow's fresh start.
Right, for sure.
Number 4, assess the parts instead of generalizing the whole. Let me explain. Depression can tinge recollections with difficult emotions. You may find yourself focusing on things that are unhelpful or perceived as difficult. Try to stop this overgeneralization,
Wow,
if I
yeah.
can say that word. Push yourself to recognize the good. As before, it helps write down what's meaningful about the event or the day. That way you can track it. You
Yeah.
can track what you've achieved that day, your activities you enjoyed. So seeing the weight that you're giving to one thing may help you direct your thoughts away from the whole
Wow, yeah.
and more to the individual pieces that were helpful.
Yeah.
Instead of like, the situation is a mess, it's terrible, it's never going to get better.
Yeah,
like, okay,
right.
no, this was good. Maybe
Yeah.
this not so much, but this was, or this was.
Well, you're tracking progress, and you're seeing that, okay, there are still parts of my life that have meaning, that there are still positive things
Right.
happening around me and in my life. So those are really good.
That's good. One more thing, and then I'll let you move on. Create a routine. If depressive symptoms disrupt your daily routine, a gentle schedule may help you feel in control. These plans don't have to map out an entire day. Focus on creating a loose but structured routine to help you keep your daily pace.
Ooh, I'm all about
it
that
says
structure,
loose
boy.
because if something doesn't, somebody comes in and disrupts or
Right,
something,
which will happen.
don't get bent out of shape. That's why
Right.
it says loosely structured.
Yeah.
Try to keep routine. Keep, have multiple avenues for that structure. That way, if one of them fails, the whole thing doesn't fall apart.
That's right.
So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good suggestions.
Yeah.
And I have some additional questions. Just things you can audit yourself if you've been depressed or maybe you experience bouts of depression. Number one, how long have you felt depressed? Think about that. Are you going into the second week, the second month? Maybe you're running into like an extended period of time where you're depressed. So how long have you been depressed? And what was happening in your life when you first became depressed? Listen to this follow-up. Someone who is depressed often needs acceptance and gentleness, all right, because you feel like you have failed in some way. So think about that. Is there a trigger or something that caused you to first become depressed? Maybe it was a relationship, a job loss. Maybe it was just a realization of a failed dream. Maybe you've had something in your heart for a long time and you just, gosh, it just never came to pass. And it could be absolutely anything. Maybe it's just getting older. I'm going to be honest. That's a
Right.
hard pill to swallow. Getting older and realize, wow, where did the time go?
Yes.
Like, am I on my final leg? Is this my final tour? Like, is this it? All of those things can really play a part on the mind, guys. And if we're not careful, it could cause us to go down a dark road. Have you been depressed before? Is there a pattern? Is there a history here? Do you have family history of depression? And then obviously some of the other ones go into like your appetite and are you eating and have you lost interest in pleasurable activities? Those are sure signs that you might be dealing with depression if the cloud is with you no matter where you go. And that's really the best way to describe it. And that's not for me. I remember the commercial that came out about meds for depression.
Right.
And it was characterized by this person, I think it was a caricature, like animated person walking around, and no matter what they did, the cloud was there. It doesn't matter if it was sunny outside, they were playing on a playground, they were doing something fun. The cloud was always there. So think about that. And I also want to ask you one last question. What do you see in your future? What do you see in your future? Do you see overcoming this thing? Do you see hope? Do you see a future without depression? Even if that means that you have to be on meds, that's okay. That's okay. God can use that. God can use those meds to bring you back to a level place, to where you need to be, and that is just fine. So think about that. Think about your future and what you see there. And then real quick, I wanted to just challenge you. Over the next week, prepare a list of 10 things you would like about yourself, and 10 things you like about yourself.
Okay,
rather.
like about
Sorry
yourself.
about that.
Gotcha.
Over the next week, prepare a list of 10 things you like about yourself, and 3 of them have to be physical characteristics.
Oh, gosh.
All right. So think about that. Think about 10 things, and only 3 have to be physical things. Maybe you got a good smile, you got good hair, right? You got good teeth. That's something I never had, and that's why
Why does the thought of this just...
Yeah. Well, that's why I have wires on my mouth, because I never had good teeth, right? So I'm just saying, learn to love yourself, and that's what this exercise is meant to do. So, and I'll say this too, because we're not going to hit everything, but all of these, really all that we talked about, you could apply to everything. If it's another mental illness, the same questions I just asked, ask those questions. But instead of it depression, maybe it's bipolar. Insert bipolar. How long have I been bipolar? When did I first notice it? What are the things? Obviously, in a 30-minute session, we can't talk about everything, but we felt that anxiety and depression were the 2 biggest ones, and that's why we wanted to spend some time there. And the last one is, especially if you're a believer, if there's a lifestyle that's causing you to be depressed. Maybe you're feeling guilt and shame about some things, right? Maybe it's, let's just be honest. That's the way life happens. Maybe you've made some choices, led you down the wrong road, and now you're kind of depressed about the life choices that you made. I want you to know that forgiveness is there, and the restoration with God, it's only a prayer away. Literally, it's only a prayer away. That's God's promise that in Him, in Christ, He'll remove our sins as far as the east is from the west, and that's an unfathomable amount. Yes, I said unfathomable on the podcast. So I just think about that.
What does that make me think of? There's a movie, Megamind.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
Interesting.
the little dude who says unfathomable.
I didn't know that.
He doesn't even does his tongue like that. That is funny.
So closing thoughts for you.
Well, I wanted to talk about the psychotic disorder as well, just real quick.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Just different things.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Yeah.
He's wrapping it up, man. Yeah. Okay, this could go for those as well. Peer support.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Which means you have to talk about it. You have to seek out help. You have to research and find these things. So we're going to post some resources here in a moment. You talked about recognizing your triggers, so I won't go into that. Learn to relax. Kind of hit on that a little bit.
Yes.
Looking after your physical health. But the last thing, create a crisis plan. And let me explain what that is.
That's good.
Okay. During a crisis, you may not be able to tell people what helps you. Okay. When you're in those moments and you're having that anxiety or that psychosis.
Yeah.
When you're feeling well, it can be a good idea to talk to someone you trust about what you would like to happen or not to happen when you are in a crisis.
Gotcha.
Okay. It might help to create a crisis plan, and we can post some resources here. And that's going to look different for everyone.
That's
it's going to be different for whoever it is that you are close to and you trust someone to say, hey, if you could be there for me, if I have this happen, I may give you a call. I may come to your house. I don't know, whatever that looks like.
That's exactly right.
But having a plan so that person knows, okay, this is what's happening with my friend.
Yeah.
Let me reenact or do what I need to do, what was according to our plan in that moment.
Yeah.
So,
well, and I would say too, just on a spiritual level, I think everybody that tunes in is a believer at this point. I mean, I would just say incorporate that spiritual side of that crisis plan too. Pray, get on your knees, cry out to God, give you peace, whatever, make that part of the plan too. And obviously we want to take proactive, practical, physical steps as well, because guys, we understand that mental health is no joke, and I just want to encourage others. This is always a big deal. It's just as hard for your loved ones who are not going through a mental health crisis, who love you, to deal with your mental health crisis. It's extremely hard.
Yeah,
and gosh, if that's you and maybe you're not the one that suffers with mental health, but you have a family member, you could even have a child that's dealing with mental health and a mental health crisis. Gosh, I just wanted to encourage you to stay steadfast and to utilize some of these same things. And I just want to say thank you too for being there for them, because it is extremely hard. So just keep going. You don't always have to have the answer, but if you love them and you're there for them, 9 times out of 10, that's good enough. I mean, sometimes just being there, you don't always have to have the right answers. But hopefully through this conversation over the last 3 weeks, we've been able to talk about some things, and maybe it's been enlightening. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I hope it's been as beneficial for you guys as it has for us. And what else you got?
I can say something else.
You can say something else. All right.
No, look up these resources that we're going to post, because it's always good. You never know. Life has seasons of such and such come and go, different things. So we want to help you guys out and give you a jump start. It's not the end all be all for sure, but just a place to start at least.
That's it.
So
thanks for tuning in, guys, to the Junto podcast. That's right. The Together podcast. She hates when we do that. We'll see you next time. Be blessed.
Bye.
Peace. Thank you for listening to the Junto podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. You can find our link to YouTube and social media at juntopodcast.com. Remember to subscribe, like, and follow. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next time.